Ms. Jefferson, this office handled money meant to keep students fed.
That fund was part of the routine here. It moved every month because the cafeteria had to keep running.
Monique Jefferson operated without oversight for nearly 2 decades as a school bookkeeper trusted with the district's free lunch fund. What investigators found when someone finally checked will leave you speechless.
The charge says $300,000 disappeared from that routine.
When the routine is where money vanishes, every normal entry starts looking deliberate.
She would not be back at her desk on Monday. The investigators standing in her driveway already had bank records, vendor invoices, and a rental agreement for a UPS store mailbox on Veterans Boulevard that she had been quietly paying on for almost 5 years. $300,000. A free and reduced price lunch program for 4,200 children. 19 years of trust inside the Marston County School District. All of it ending right here, on a Tuesday morning in late November. On the porch of the brick ranch she still owed 11 years on. Real talk. Have you ever sat in a school cafeteria line as a kid and wondered who actually pays for the food on your tray? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe if you're new here. This channel covers the people who are supposed to safeguard those programs, and the exact moment the system catches up to them. We do this every week. Monique Renee Jefferson was born on the south side of Augusta, Georgia, in November of 1975. Her father, Eugene Jefferson, was a brick mason who spent most of his working life on commercial job sites between Augusta and Aiken. Her mother, Loretta Jefferson, spent 26 years working in the cafeteria at A.R. Johnson Elementary, scooping mashed potatoes and pinto beans onto sectioned plastic trays for children whose first names she eventually learned by heart. The Jefferson family lived in a 3-bedroom brick rancher on Lumpkin Road. Monique was the middle of 3 girls. The house always smelled like cornbread and pine sol. The paycheck arrived every other Thursday, and Loretta cashed it at the trust company branch on Walton Way the same afternoon. When she was 8 years old, Monique would walk through her mother's serving line in the cafeteria at A.R. Johnson and pretend she did not know her. Loretta played along. They both thought it was the funniest thing in the world. Years later, family friends would recall that Monique had grown up understanding exactly what a school lunch meant to a kid whose parents could not afford one. Loretta had explained it to her early. There were children in that line who would not eat again until they came back through it the next morning. You never made a face. You never asked questions. You filled the tray. Monique graduated from Lakeside High School in May of 1994. Her yearbook listed her as a member of the Future Business Leaders of America and the Beta Club. She enrolled at Augusta Technical College that fall and earned an associate's degree in accounting in May of 1997, paying her own tuition by working evenings at a Piggly Wiggly off Wrightsboro Road for $6.20 an hour. She married Russell Jefferson, a diesel mechanic at a Freightliner dealership, in October of 1998. Their son, Trey, was born in 2001. Their daughter, Jasmine, was born in 2003. The family moved to Marston, Georgia, in the spring of 2005, after Russell took a service manager position at a heavy equipment dealership outside town. Monique applied for the bookkeeper opening in the Marston County School District Central Office that July. Her starting salary was $31,200. Her first office was a windowless room on the second floor of the district administration building on West Cherry Street, next to the boiler closet. She decorated it with a framed photograph of her mother in her cafeteria uniform. Her early performance reviews described her as meticulous in reconciliation work, respectful in communications with vendors, and the most reliable employee in the central office. Superintendent Patrice Lanier, who joined the district in 2012, would later say in a deposition that Monique knew the cafeteria accounts better than anyone who had ever held the position, including her predecessors going back to the early 1990s. By 2015, she had been promoted to senior bookkeeper. Her salary had risen to $47,400. Her office had moved upstairs, with a window that looked out onto the staff parking lot and the water tower beyond it. That same year, she had taken in her sister's 2 daughters after her sister entered an inpatient program in Athens. The The girls, Tasha and Anaya, were 7 and 9. They lived in the Jefferson house on Beechwood Lane for the next 4 years. She braided their hair on Sunday nights. She drove them to school in the morning. She paid for their school pictures out of her own pocket. Nobody who knew her would have guessed what she was about to do. That was true of her husband. That was true of her son. That was true of the cafeteria coordinator she ate lunch with every Wednesday. That was true of the superintendent who signed her annual evaluations. It was the part of the case that the forensic auditor would later describe as the most disorienting thing she had ever investigated. The free and reduced price lunch program in the Marston County School District served roughly 2,700 children every school day across 8 buildings. Marston County had qualified for the federal community eligibility provision in 2014, which meant that any child who walked through the cafeteria line at any school in the district could receive breakfast and lunch at no cost, regardless of household income. The program was funded by a combination of federal reimbursements paid out by the Georgia Department of Education, district general fund transfers, and a modest emergency reserve that sat in a separate account at South State Bank. The mechanics were straightforward. Cafeteria managers at each school logged daily meal counts on standardized state forms. Those counts were entered into the district's nutrition services database every Friday by the cafeteria coordinator, an older woman named Eileen Mendoza, who had worked for the district since 1989. Mendoza submitted reimbursement requests to the state on a monthly basis. The state paid those requests on a 30-day cycle. That money landed in the cafeteria fund account that Monique Jefferson managed. From there, she was responsible for paying every vendor the district used to feed those 2,700 children. Cisco for produce and shelf-stable goods, Borden for milk cartons, a regional bakery called Stillwell Brothers for bread and rolls, a handful of smaller vendors for paper goods, cleaning supplies, kitchen equipment, and cafeteria tray inventory. She processed roughly 420 cafeteria-related transactions every month. She reconciled the account against the bank statement on the first of every month. She prepared the monthly board report. She presented the totals at the second board meeting of every quarter. The internal control review was annual. An outside CPA firm called Holloway & Pace, based out of Macon, performed the district's audit every July. The audit sampled 25 randomly selected transactions out of approximately 5,000 annual cafeteria fund transactions. 25 out of 5,000, 0.5%. The cafeteria coordinator did not see the vendor side of the books. The superintendent did not look at line item transactions. The school board reviewed monthly totals only. The bank reconciliations were Monique's job, and her work had never raised a single question in 19 years. That was the system that fed 4,200 Marston County children. That was the system she would quietly empty. It started in March of 2019. Tasha had been accepted into a respiratory therapy program at Augusta University. Anaya was in her junior year at Marston County High School and starting to talk about Spelman College. Russell's hours at the dealership had been cut from 45 to 32 when the dealership consolidated service operations the previous fall. Trey had recently been laid off from the textile plant in LaGrange. The Jefferson household budget, which had always been tight but managed, was now bleeding $240 a week. On the morning of March 14, 2019, Monique Jefferson sat at her desk and registered a Georgia Limited Liability Company through the Secretary of State's online portal. She named it Tri-State Cafeteria Supply, LLC. She listed herself under her maiden name of Monique Whitlock as the sole organizer. She paid the $100 filing fee with a personal debit card. That afternoon, on her lunch break, she drove to the UPS store on Veterans Boulevard and rented mailbox number 217. She paid for the year up front in cash, $180. She used that mailbox address as the registered business address for Tri-State Cafeteria Supply. The next week, she opened a business checking account at a credit union 40 miles east in Augusta, where she still had family. The account was in the name of Tri-State Cafeteria Supply, LLC. The mailing address listed on the application matched the rental mailbox. The signature card was hers. The first false invoice was issued on April 4th, 2019. It billed the Marston County School District for $1,442.11 for assorted bulk paper goods and food service liners. Monique processed the invoice through the district's accounts payable system on April 8th. She approved it herself. The payment was issued by electronic transfer to the credit union account on April 11th. The funds cleared on April 12th. That first transaction sat untouched in the credit union account for almost 3 weeks while she waited to see if anyone would notice. Nobody noticed. On May 3rd, she issued the second false invoice, $1,296. Again, she processed it, approved it, paid it. Again, the money landed in the credit union account in Augusta. By the end of 2019, Tri-State Cafeteria Supply, LLC, had received 9 payments from the Marston County School District, totaling $11,840. By the end of 2020, the annual total was $36,000. By 2022, the annual total was $78,000. She kept every individual transaction below $2,500. The district's internal procurement policy required a second signature on any single payment above $3,000. She had read the policy. She knew the threshold. She stayed under it. To make the books balance, she developed a second technique. Marston County had thousands of dormant student meal accounts attached to children who had graduated, moved, or transferred. Those accounts still existed in the Nutrition Services database, each with a small balance frozen in place. Monique began using those dormant accounts as temporary holding entries during monthly reconciliation. When a shortfall appeared, she would move it briefly into a dormant student account, generate a reconciliation report that showed 0 variance, and then redirect the offset the following month. The shortfalls migrated from one inactive account to another in a slow, careful rotation. The forensic auditors would later count 73 dormant student accounts used in this rotation across 5 years. Tasha graduated from her respiratory program. Anaya started at Spelman. The dealership restored Russell's hours. Trey found work at a warehouse outside Columbus. The household stabilized. Monique did not stop. By the end of 2023, Tri-State Cafeteria Supply, LLC, had received roughly $243,000 in district payments. The annual run rate was now close to $90,000 a year. She bought no new car. She took no vacations. She did not move out of the Beechwood Lane house. She paid down her mortgage. She paid off her sister's medical bills. She moved roughly $58,000 into a high-yield savings account at the same credit union. The forensic accountants would later describe her spending as extraordinarily disciplined. It was the discipline that made it last so long. Bradley Whitcomb was hired as the Marston County School District's new finance director in July of 2024. He was 34 years old. He had spent 8 years as a senior auditor at a regional CPA firm in Atlanta before moving back to his hometown to take the district job. His wife had just delivered their second child. He wanted reasonable hours and a community he understood. His first task as finance director was to prepare the district's annual budget for the upcoming school year. To do that, he asked for 5 years of department-by-department expenditure reports. He spent the first 2 weeks of August reading them at his kitchen table after the kids went to bed. He noticed something in the cafeteria fund. Enrollment in the Marston County School District had been essentially flat for 5 years. Total student count had moved between 4,100 and 4,240. Daily meal counts had been similarly stable, ranging between 2,600 and 2,800 served per day. But cafeteria expenditures had climbed, steadily, year over year. By 2024, the district was spending roughly 19% more on cafeteria supply line items than it had been spending in 2019, with no corresponding increase in meal counts, no corresponding increase in food prices that would explain it, and no documented expansion of programming. Bradley Whitcomb is a careful man. He did not raise an alarm. He did not send an email. On the morning of Tuesday, August 27th, 2024, he walked down the hallway to Monique Jefferson's office, knocked on the open door, and asked her if she had time to walk him through the cafeteria supply vendors so he could understand the program better. She told him she would pull the files and bring them by his office that afternoon. She brought him a binder. It contained a tidy summary of each vendor, contact information, payment history, and product categories. Tri-State Cafeteria Supply, LLC, was listed near the top. The summary described it as a regional dry goods and paper products vendor based in Augusta. The contact phone number on the sheet had a 706 area code. The contact name was Marcus Whitlock. Bradley thanked her. He took the binder. He did not say anything else. That night, he sat down at his kitchen table again. He called the 706 number on the Tri-State Cafeteria Supply line. It rang 7 times and went to a generic voicemail with no business name and no greeting. He pulled up the Georgia Secretary of State Business Registration database the next morning. He typed in Tri-State Cafeteria Supply, LLC. The registered organizer was a Monique Whitlock. The registered address was a UPS store on Veterans Boulevard in Marston. He printed the page. He carried it down the hall to Superintendent Patrice Lanier's office. He closed the door behind him. We're heading into the investigation now. If you have made it this far, you already know this channel does not let stories like this disappear quietly. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. We cover the cases the local news drops after a single cycle. Superintendent Lanier did exactly what an experienced superintendent does when handed a piece of paper like that. She put the document in a sealed envelope inside her desk, and she called the district's outside auditors, Holloway and Pace, the same afternoon. By the end of the week, a forensic accountant named Carol Estrada had been retained to conduct a quiet, full-scope review of the cafeteria fund, going back to January of 2019. Estrada worked out of an unused office in the district's central building. Monique Jefferson was told that the review was a routine pre-audit cleanup. She brought Estrada coffee on the 3rd morning. Estrada needed 11 weeks to put the full picture together. She traced every payment to Tri-State Cafeteria Supply, LLC. She subpoenaed the bank records of the credit union account in Augusta. She traced the deposits forward into a high-yield savings account, a payment toward the principal of the mortgage on Beechwood Lane, and 3 personal cashier's checks payable to Augusta University's Bursar's office for tuition installments on a respiratory therapy program. She found 147 separate payments to Tri-State Cafeteria Supply, LLC, over 5 years. The total was $297,891. She found the 73 dormant student meal accounts used as temporary holding entries during reconciliation. She found the altered monthly reports going back to 2019. She found that the listed contact name on the Tri-State Cafeteria Supply files, Marcus Whitlock, was the name of Monique's deceased uncle, who had passed away in Augusta in 2017. She found the rental agreement for UPS Store Mailbox 217 on Veterans Boulevard, paid annually in cash, signed by Monique Jefferson, with a photocopy of her Georgia driver's license stapled to the original lease. She found the text messages between Monique and her sister from October of 2021. Monique, October 3rd, 2021. I covered Tasha's last installment. Don't worry about it. Sister, October 3rd, 2021. Where are you getting this kind of money? Monique, October 3rd, 2021. Side bookkeeping. Don't ask. Sister, October 4th, 2021. I'm asking. Monique, October 4th, 2021. Then don't. Estrada delivered her final report to Superintendent Lanier on the morning of November 18th, 2024. The Marston County District Attorney's Office and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation were briefed that same afternoon. A warrant for Monique Jefferson's arrest was signed by a Marston County magistrate the following Monday. The arrest team assembled in the parking lot of a Waffle House on Veterans Boulevard at 6:45 the next morning. Special Agent Reginald Doss of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation knocked on the front door of the house on Beechwood Lane at 7:04 in the morning on Tuesday, November 26, 2024. Two uniformed Marston County deputies were on the porch behind him. A second GBI agent was at the back door. Monique Jefferson was in her kitchen pouring coffee into a travel mug. She was wearing a plum-colored blouse, gray slacks, and house slippers. Her work badge was already clipped to the strap of her purse on the counter. She opened the door. "Doss. Mrs. Jefferson, I'm Special Agent Doss with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. We have a warrant for your arrest. I need you to step outside and put your hands behind your back." Jefferson: "I'm sorry. For what?" Doss: "Theft by taking, embezzlement of public funds, falsifying records. Ma'am, please step outside." Jefferson: "There has been a mistake. I have not taken anything from anybody." Doss: "Ma'am, we have your bank records. We have the mailbox lease. We have the LLC paperwork in your maiden name. Please step outside." She did not respond for a long moment. Her hand was still on the doorframe. Her face did not change. Jefferson: "Can I get my purse?" Doss: "We will get your purse. Step outside, please." She stepped onto the porch. She turned around without being asked. She put her hands behind her back. The handcuffs went on at 7:07. Russell Jefferson appeared in the doorway behind her in a Freightliner t-shirt with no shoes on. He did not say anything. She turned her head and met his eyes once, briefly, as Agent Doss walked her down the front steps. She did not look back again. In the back of the GBI vehicle, she asked one question. "Jefferson, are the kids going to know?" She said nothing else for the rest of the ride. The Marston County Grand Jury returned a 14-count indictment on December 9th, 2024. 3 counts of theft by taking over $25,000. 3 counts of embezzlement of public funds under Georgia Code, Section 16-10-9. 8 counts of falsifying public records under Section 45-11-1. Bail was set at $50,000. Russell Jefferson borrowed against the equity in the Beechwood Lane house to post it. She was suspended without pay the day of the arrest. Fees. She was formally terminated by a unanimous vote of the Marston County School Board on December 12, 2024. Her defense attorney was Marcus Bean, a Macon-based criminal defense lawyer with 26 years of experience in white-collar cases. Bean filed a motion to suppress the forensic auditor's report on the grounds that Estrada had been retained without informing the subject of the review of her right to counsel. The motion was denied. He filed a motion to sever counts. That motion was also denied. He recommended that his client accept a negotiated plea. On March 4, 2025, Monique Jefferson entered a plea of guilty to 2 counts of theft by taking and 1 count of embezzlement of public funds. The remaining counts were dismissed as part of the agreement. Sentencing took place on May 20, 2025, in the Marston County Superior Court before the Honorable Davis Pendergrass. The state called 3 witnesses. The first was Carol Estrada, who walked the court through the methodology of the forensic review. The second was Superintendent Patrice Lanier, who testified about the impact of the missing funds on the district's emergency reserve and the delayed purchase of 3 commercial ovens for the elementary cafeterias. The third was Eileen Mendoza, the cafeteria coordinator, who had worked alongside Monique for 19 years. Mendoza was on the stand for 11 minutes. Toward the end, the prosecutor asked her what she would say to her former colleague if she could. Mendoza said, "I would ask her how she sat across from me at lunch every Wednesday and ate a sandwich and talked about her grandchildren while she was taking food money away from babies. I would ask her that. I do not believe she has an answer." Monique Jefferson did not speak. Judge Pendergrass imposed sentence at 3:42 in the afternoon. 10 years in the custody of the Georgia Department of Corrections, with 7 years to serve and 3 years on probation. Restitution in the full amount of $297,891. A permanent bar from any future position involving fiduciary responsibility for public funds. Before pronouncing sentence, the judge made the following statement on the record. Pendergrass. Mrs. Jefferson, the people of Marston County trusted you for 19 years to safeguard money that was meant to feed their children. You did not steal from a corporation. You did not steal from a wealthy man. You stole from a lunch program. That is the part of this case that this court cannot stop thinking about. You knew which line you were taking from. You walked past it every day for 5 years. The court finds no mitigation in the record sufficient to depart from the sentence the state has requested. Monique Jefferson is currently serving her sentence at Pulaski State Prison in Hawkinsville, Georgia. Her projected release date is May of 2032. The Marston County School District has implemented a dual signature requirement on all cafeteria fund disbursements, a quarterly outside review of vendor master files, and an annual public report on the free and reduced price lunch program's reserve balance. The 3 commercial ovens were purchased the following summer. This case was hard to listen to, but the case on the right-hand side of your screen is somehow even worse. Click it now.